Things are going from bad to worse for The Lord of the Rings, The War of the Rohirrim. We have a new report that in the movie's international release, which happened over this weekend, it only grossed $2 million total. On top of that poor performance, we also saw its domestic projections be significantly declined across the board, over 40% decline on what the original projections were. Roll this up over at phantompulse.com. You can find the link in the description below. I encourage you to head on over there and become a paid subscriber. Help support us in fighting against woke ideology, woke culture that is trying to infect and destroy our society. So, according to Variety's Rebecca Rubin, the film debuted in 3,410 theaters in 31 different countries, but was only able to garner just a total of $2 million total internationally. The highest performing locations were Spain with 347,000, Mexico with 239,000, and Thailand with 146,000. So not looking good for this film. I did find it interesting that Spain was the highest. Usually you see maybe the UK, Brazil, France are up there over Spain. So that is concerning. I don't know if it hasn't released in those countries yet. It's possible it hasn't. But still, this is not good. 2 million internationally is not good at all, and unclear if it's released in China either. So on top of that, we saw Sean Robbins at Box Office Theory significantly downgrade the film's domestic box office expectations in his latest forecast update, which he posted on December 5th, just a couple of days ago. He had originally predicted the film would gross between 15 million and 24 million in its opening weekend. He specifically predicted the film will gross only 17.5 million. As for its total domestic box office haul, Robbins believed it would bring in between 44 million and 84.5 million. He specifically noted it would do just 49.5 million. So he has that huge range on that domestic total, but it's not even in the middle of the range. It's 49.5, which is, I thought, was already a horrible sign, right? So, and this is what he explained at the time. The anime approach with this sequel is likely to hinder what is usually a broader audience appeal for the Lord of the Rings franchise. Still, the medium has proven strong, even with lesser-known titles in the domestic market. So Rings could attract some attention here as a counterplayer, perhaps not dissimilar to how Godzilla Minus One aided the market late last year. I think this is all a bunch of bogus right here. The whole fact that it's animated is holding it back. I think we've seen animated films do extraordinarily well when they're adapting other IPs. Obviously, you look at the Spider-Man movies, they did extraordinarily well at the box office. So this idea that the animated approach to War of the Rohirrim here is somehow holding it back, I just don't buy that. Now, maybe there's a difference between the Spider-Man audience and the Lord of the Rings audience, which I obviously think there is. I think there's a significant difference there, but the difference here, I don't think it's that huge. I think there are other factors at play here that are seeing these numbers go way down, and they have gone way down. Opening weekend predictions are down 43%. Robbins predicts the film will only gross between 8 million and 13 million. Now, remember, he was saying that it would do 15 million and 24 million. So it's not even at the basement where he was originally predicting. Now, the top end is not even at the basement. It's below that. The top end now is 13 million, below what the previous basement was, 8 to 13 million, 43% decline. And he says it's only going to likely do just 10 million. That might even be too high, given the international numbers there with just 2 million. It might not even do 5. That it's looking really bad here. As for the film's total domestic run, he also downgraded that 47%. He now predicts it will only bring in between 23.5 million and 37 million. And he specifically predicted it will do just 26 million. So again, not on the high end, right? Not even in the middle. Clearly on the lower end of his range there, which again, doesn't bode well for this film at all. I don't think we've seen any kind of budget, but I would assume that they had to spend at least a significant sum of money on this movie. And it looks like they're going to lose quite a bit of that. As for why he decided to downgrade the numbers here, he said this: Lord of the Rings, The War of the Rohirrim is slower out of the gate in its early pre-sale modeling than projected. The pre-existing Tolkien fan base would normally be expected to generate noticeable upfront demand. I actually agree with that. You look at the Rings of Power and how much that first season had, the numbers were extraordinary. But then once people realized what they were watching, they gave it a chance. People still gave it a chance. As much as what we saw with all the previews, all of the DEI, all of the wokeness, all the feminism that was being injected into that, even in the promotion of the show, people still gave it a chance, showed up. But then what was the report from the Hollywood Reporter? 63% of people decided not to actually finish the show. Massive people just not deciding not to watch because it was awful. So they would, like, you would think that they would be expected to generate noticeable upfront demand. I actually agree with that. But I think because of Rings of Power, they have significantly damaged the Lord of the Rings brand in the eyes of the consumer. This brand is now tainted with wokeness and DEI. Even though Rings of Power is Amazon and War of the Rohirrim is Warner Brothers. They're two different studios, but at the end of the day, I think it has been tainted with wokeness. So anyways, he goes on and says, the anime nature of this film could also skew the typical demographics for the previously live action-based franchise. He's all about the medium and not about the actual story, because they're literally promoting this story as feminist propaganda. They've made it very clear in the marketing by making the unnamed daughter of Helm Hammerhand, who's literally only mentioned in one sentence in appendix, I don't remember which appendix it is, but in the appendices, instead of, making Helm Hammerhand the protagonist, or even his nephew Freyleaf, those should have been the protagonists of this movie. Instead, they made Hera, who was actually unnamed in the appendix by Tolkien, the main protagonist. And you have producer Philippa Boyens attempting to justify this, telling Entertainment Weekly, saying, in the appendices where the story is drawn from, we get these quite interestingly drawn male characters, and then we get this young female character who is never named, and that was really interesting to me. We know Helm has a daughter, and we know that she was central to the conflict that happened, but myself, and especially screenwriter Phoebe Gittins, were drawn to her. We could feel the weight of being that unnamed daughter, which immediately piqued our interest. Who was she? How did she live? So, like, they literally just wanted to tell their own story. They didn't want to tell the story that Tolkien wrote, and they think that they can write Tolkien better. I mean, it's Rings of Power all over again, and they're literally telling us this in the marketing for this movie. And it's not surprising that people have seen this stuff. They've seen all the promo stuff. They've seen the cringy clips that they've showed where she's challenging Wolf to a one-on-one duel. He mocks her and derides her, like, what would I do? What would I gain by that? And then she calls him a coward. And then all of a sudden he's trying to fight her. It's so stupid. It's utterly ridiculous. And nothing Tolkien would ever write. It's awful. Anyway, we also have this report that she communes with the great eagles and that she calls on the power of a seemingly long-lost tribe of female warriors to drive out the Dunlettings from Rohan. And that report came from a screening at the Annecy Film Festival for this movie like last year, I want to say. It might have been earlier this year, but definitely was where they were actually showing clips and portions of the movie during a presentation for this, trying to build up hype for the movie within the animation community. And it seems to have completely and utterly fallen flat, as we're now looking at an opening weekend of just 8 million to 13 million, and specifically just 10 million. And I think that might even be high because, again, he already downgraded it 43%. It could be even more. I just don't think there's any interest in this film. And people who enjoy The Lord of the Rings, who enjoy J.R. Tolkien, are not interested in seeing his stories be bastardized by these woke ideologues. But let me know what you guys make of this. What do you make of these predictions going way, way down, and the fact that it only grossed 2 million internationally a week ahead of its domestic release? Let me know in the comments below. Remember to always be charitable and to always, always speak the truth.